Welcome everybody to the 40 Finance channel. Today I'm going to share a 2025 outlook on the TQQQ. This is the 3X leveraged ETF that mimics the daily performance of the QQQ. So if the Qs go up 2% in a day, this particular ETF would go up about 6%, but the same holds true on the downside. The Qs go down 2% in a day, then you're going to see the value of this one fall about 6% as well. Now, if you're a longtime subscriber, you know that I've owned the TQQQ, and I actually started buying it on purpose near the top of the COVID boom, if you will, in the stock market, just to kind of prove a point on how this one acts and use it as a case study. I bought it all the way into the bottoms of 2022 and then turned around and made 20% or so, I think, here at the beginning of the year. Originally, the experiment was to buy it and hold it forever, and some life things came up, and I just decided to take my wins after I made it through that long stretch. But I am looking for opportunities to get back into this one, and that's where this 2025 Outlook and Strategies video comes from. Now, if you're not familiar with the risk-reward scenario for TQQQ, just know it does have a lot of risk involved. And I put together a video, which I'll link to down in the description, a couple years ago. It's sort of a facts versus myths about the TQQQ. It's one of my more popular videos. I probably need to make a new one for 2025 just to refresh. But the principle of that video still remains, and that is, despite what you may hear, it is very, very difficult, almost impossible, for this particular ETF to go to zero in 1 day, 5 days, all the things. Basically, the scenario where the TQQQ goes to zero is more than likely a game-ending scenario for the stock market as a whole, and you won't have to worry about your investments. All right, now one of the simplest things you can do when you're getting into these leveraged ETFs is give yourself some rules. Okay, and that's probably a good name of the game for investing as a whole. But what exactly are you looking for, as in when you would buy a stock, and what are you looking for when you're talking about when you'd get out of a stock? Now, in my case, I am looking towards a long-term hold of TQQQ, so I've put these things in place. And number one on the board really should apply to any stock you ever buy, and that is just understand the risks. And there's a lot of people out there, a lot of naysayers when it comes to TQQQ strategy, who just go on and on and on of how it won't work and this is awful and blah, blah, blah. And I guess to them, I would just say, fair point. Go to another side of investing where, this doesn't come into play. There's literally thousands of investing tools and stocks out there. So you're either in this with a bullish attitude or you're not, which brings us to point number 2. You have to be bullish on the long term of the stock market. In particular, you should be bullish on the next, let's just call it 10 to 20 years of the QQQ. If you do not have that sentiment in general, and I'm not talking about pullbacks and potential, one-off crash events, if you don't believe that the QQQ represents the future of technology and the wins in the stock market, then TQQQ is obviously not going to be for you. Then number 3 here, when we're talking about buy points, I'm always looking for a 14-day RSI of 30 or below. This year is a little more interesting with this point that I'll talk about, just because we are kind of at all-time highs. But I used to have this number at 40. But right now I'm looking for 30 and below to pepper in some shares, and then obviously dollar cost averaging along the way. The flip side of the 30 RSI is, when would you potentially sell? And that would be shares or options. And in my case, that would be above an RSI of 70. You always should have cash available so that you can take advantage of the number 3 point here. And then, of course, you need some sort of a hedge plan. That can be a million different things. I've read a lot of different philosophies about people who buy one specific instrument to offset the TQQQ risk, meaning in instances where the Qs are likely to go down, an interest rate or a treasury or something would go up. In my world, I think it's just more simple to keep your TQQQ exposure limited. And if you want to stay in the stock market, just look for NYSE stocks or perhaps a dividend ETF that really just has no correlation to the Qs whatsoever. There's a million ways to do it. And then you see at the bottom there, short-term goal for me, which I'm basically like starting over on my retail taxable account. I'd like to get to 100 shares of the Qs over time. I'm not necessarily in a hurry. And then in a perfect world, getting, somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 shares of TQQQ. Okay, let's switch over to Seeking Alpha and see where things sit here today in January. If you're new to Seeking Alpha and you want to learn more about the tool, I have a great promotional offer in the description, potentially support my channel at the same time. You do get a discount and a free trial on the front end of that special deal. Now, as far as the Qs go, this is just regular Qs, okay? If we kind of pan out a little bit from 5 years, all right, this is your COVID low. You are, darn near close, all-time highs. Now, that by itself isn't necessarily a bearish sign to me, because remember, fundamentally, you should be bullish on the Qs at all times as a long-term investor. The kicker, of course, is that we have a presidential change happening. Anytime you get to all-time highs, most people can only see the way down, and they have trouble seeing the way up from here. But I think at the end of the day, for me, I'm a little more cautious because I'm just starting into a position here. I'm a little more cautious at all-time highs, and I'm going to follow my rules much more closely. Now here's the TQQQ chart. Not much of a difference. The price right now is at $80, and this is the 5-year view, up 200 some odd percent. If you think back for my history, and one of the reasons that I've gained even more confidence in this particular one is, I was sort of in here. I was in here somewhere, I think on this dip here, that I started buying all the way through 2022 lows. And then, of course, in 2023, you got a little bit of a break, and then things pulled back into the fall. But then coming into 2024, things really took off again. Now, we talked about the RSI rules that I have, and of course, you can make your own. Mine is looking for opportunities under an RSI of 30. This is a 14-day that I use. But your rule could be as simple as I want to see 20, 30% off of a certain price, whether on the regular Qs or the TQs before you buy. That's fine. Whatever it is, have a rule. That's the only thing that I would suggest. Also have a rule for when you would potentially get out of it. But let's look at where we are on this RSI today. I'll try to bring this up a little bit. We are over, it's January 16th, and I should call out before I start, it's not going to be easy to read, but these RSI numbers are going to be in here. The low one that we're looking for is purple. Okay, so now I'm going to hover over to today's date. And today's RSI, best I can tell, sits at 56.57. Today's a sort of a bounce back day. Let's take a low day. We'll go back to, what is this? Looks like December 18th at close, you had an RSI of 28. So that is a potential opportunity under my rules. But if we also look at that December 18th, again, you're coming off massive, massive highs. I don't know if I'm ready to buy off of the first dump down on all-time highs. So best I can tell, the last opportunity was back in November, potentially November 15th. The price at that time was around $74. If you go back to August, where we had some extra volatility in August, looks like right around August 15th, you're below 30, and the price at that particular time was $54. So there's a lot of traders and swing traders and such who work in the TQs, and they just go by the, sort of an RSI rule, and they buy at, let's just say it was this 25 here. And if they sold above 70, like my rule states, they would have sold around August 15th or so, and they would have went from $54 to $67. Now, if you're like me and you're coming into 2025 and you're like, geez, what's a great entry point, very specifically on the TQs, my opinion is you just got off of all-time highs. But I use this Mag 7 tracker that I built in Seeking Alpha. It's just basically a portfolio, right? And then I can kind of customize the metrics how I want. And you scroll over here and you look at the 52-week range for the Mag 7, darn near the top for Meta. Same with Google, same with Amazon. NVIDIA's actually cooled off just a little bit, but it's more than halfway towards their 52-week high. Same with Tesla, who also got trimmed a little bit here lately. But bottom line, you look down here and you got, really Microsoft would be the first one that you would say perhaps has sold off enough to be undervalued if I'm just looking at the 52-week range and not doing any other fundamental analysis. Then clicking over here, one of the other things that concerns me that I've covered in a lot of videos is the concept of declining growth. Okay, so this is revenue year over year, revenue forward just for Meta. So last year's growth was more than this year's growth, and same on the EPS line. So for me personally, unless there's a historic drop in the Qs or just some unbelievable opportunity, I probably won't fiddle much with the TQs until we get after the key earnings period, late January into February. During that stretch, most of these guys are going to have to come out with their updated numbers for the fiscal year, and I'm curious to see how it aligns with these analysts' expectations. All right, so bottom line for me, almost for sure I will be buying back into the TQs at some point this year. However, as of January 15th, my opinion is there's probably more risk to the downside than there is the upside, and I would like to see Q1 earnings, not to mention the inauguration event. I would like to see us get past all of that stuff before I start trickling into this one a little bit. All right, so that's my 2025 outlook on TQQQ. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Don't forget to check out that special Seeking Alpha Premium offer down below. Hope everybody's doing well. We'll see you on the next video.